Hail cheaters! Welcome to the Always Cheating Podcast. My name is Josh. I'm here with Brandon. Brandon, welcome back from France. Good to see you. Nice to have you back.
Bonjour, Josh. Yes, it's good to be back. Feels like I missed, like 2 weeks worth of Always Cheating content. So that's a long time to be away because Always Cheating, it's like our little baby, you know? Nobody wants to be away from their baby for that long. But big thanks to Eric Sibbles for filling in last week. I thought he did an excellent job. And Josh, goes without saying, you're always doing an excellent job on Always Cheating. Speaking of doing an excellent job.
Still good to hear it. Yeah.
Look at your game week 29. I mean, if we're here to talk about doing well at FPL, I'm glad I'm podcasting with you, Josh, because you're having a great week. I salvaged what could have been a bum first half of double game week 29 on Sunday. So we'll get into all that, I'm sure. So what did I miss, Josh? Anything important the last couple of weeks? Or anything that happened in the last 5 minutes, perhaps?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I will chime in and I'll say thanks to Eric Sibbles for having us on the pod. I popped on our friends, one of our Patreon supporters, Brian Chen. I called him Bruce like 3 times last week. I have no. Why would a person turn Brian into Bruce? Brandon, can you explain?
Because we're constantly thinking of Alistair Bruce Ball.
Is that what it is?
Also known as Ball Bruce.
So many great Bruces out there. But I went on their FPL Blues pod as well, so you can check that out. It was more of kind of an interview with me. So if you want, if for some crazy reason you want more Josh-centric content, Brandon, it's out there and available. As of the last, there's nothing there that you haven't heard literally hundreds of times.
I've read the book 100 times. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. But as of 5 minutes ago, we're recording this on Sunday, late in the afternoon on Sunday. Graham Potter has been sacked, which was kind of coming. I'm actually a little surprised he got through the international break, but you can't spend $1.5 billion on contracts that stretch into the 2040s and then lose at home to Aston Villa, right? 2-0. No offense to Aston Villa, but that was we kind of figured that was the straw that was going to break Potter at Chelsea, and here we are. And so, I mean, what are your initial thoughts? I mean, literally just this broke as we were hit the record button. So, what are your thoughts on Potter and how this might change Chelsea? I suppose from like a fantasy point of view more than anything. Do you think does it make you more interested in having some of their fantasy assets? Does it change anything?
I suppose it does, because the great attribute and failing of Potter at Chelsea was he came with ideas. He came with his own ideas. He has technical systems that he wants to put onto the club, and more power to him, but it wasn't working, especially with, like you point out, all these new signings, guys who will be playing at Chelsea even when we have flying cars and are taking jetpacks to our office jobs. So I think it's kind of encouraging for Chelsea from an FPL perspective, because they have so many ballers. They have so many great players. You just watch João Felix. He looks so incredible, even playing within the constructs that Potter has. So if they are able to be a little bit more free-flowing, maybe that benefits them. Watching the Villa match, Ben Chilwell was like the most forward player. Ben Chilwell had an excellent game, even though he finished on 0 fantasy points. So there's just so much potential in that team to be unlocked. And do you unlock it by bringing in a caretaker who just says, all right, fellas, go out there and just do your thing?
I mean, we just saw it with Roy Hodgson, right? Like there's sort of a... I think that's the problem is with Hodgson. It's at least the same squad, right? There aren't 24 players in the squad that you can sort of rotate in and change things around.
He didn't have to introduce himself to any new players. Hodgson at Palace, he knew them all.
Yeah, it's interesting because Rodgers just got sacked today too, Brendan Rodgers, and so we have the rare Sunday double sacking, Brandon, and the Rodgers one I'm a little surprised by, because I mean yes and no. I sort of felt like if they were going to sack him, they would have done it 10 weeks ago or, in the spring or something like that. And, but Hodgson basically did it. Hodgson ended Rodgers. I mean, I think if they won that match, they probably stick with Rodgers for the rest of the season. And now I guess there's enough of a worry. But I think with both these squads, the concern is whether, and again, I'm speaking from a fantasy perspective here, the concern is whether things can change enough in a kind of predictable way to make them appealing as fantasy assets. I could see them winning more, but like with Leicester, like how do you suddenly turn those defenders into good defenders? I don't think that the problem at Leicester is that Rodgers couldn't get them to be a strong defensive team. I don't think they're capable of it, as sort of constituted.
I'll give you one idea. And the double sacking is the rare 1-to-1 correlation between Brandon's bench and starting goalkeeper. Kepa, my starting goalkeeper, his manager now gone, which means Kepa keeps his starting place. There's nothing to see here. Everything is fine. But Brendan Rodgers leaving is good news for Brandon's bench goalkeeper, and it is #justice for Danny Ward, because what you get with starting Everson is an own goal, and that serves you right. And you're now on the dole, Mr. Rodgers, because of what you did to my bench boost. And I do wonder.
I want to talk about your bench boost in a second.
Okay. I wonder if Danny Ward gets back into the first team or the starting 11. I should say. Here's my thought.
Here's my thought. Instead of a simple, I can think of a very elegant solution to this, Brandon. Why only have one? Why not start Everson and Ward if you're the caretaker manager? 2 goalkeepers are better than 1. Right. And so just you have 9 outfield players, 2 keepers. I realize only one of them can touch the ball, but he's still allowed to wear the gloves, right? Just to feel at home.
I mean, Mudryk was wearing gloves for Chelsea the other day. I think it's true. Everyone gets they get a crazed feeling when like Kyle Walker or Harry Kane, outfielder in goal, Claxon. What about goalkeeper in the outfield? Well, exactly. When do we get to see that?
I want an out of position Ward playing as a second keeper who can't use his hands. That'd be incredible. And so I think that could really turn things around for Leicester. So let's hope that happens. As for Chelsea, it was so. I mean, of course, and then Pulisic, who just this was his moment, right? They have all these inabilities to score, and then he comes back from international break, and Potter was like, now he's got a cold. And he's out because of the cold. And it's just like nothing can go right for him at Chelsea. His destiny does not lie at Chelsea Football Club. I'm sorry to say. He needs to go to, I don't even know. It honestly would be awesome if he went to Fulham. And basically, I mean, Willian's 34? Like that's not going to last anymore, right? So bring him to Fulham, and that'd be awesome.
Fulham's got a full-on rebuild. I mean, their squad has overperformed, and you couldn't be happier as a Fulham supporter with the season they've had. But you're kidding yourself if you think you can, if that Fulham squad can carry that form into next season. So Fulham. I was talking to our friend Chancer Dan last night. He said, "What if Dominic Calvert-Lewin can ever get fit again? Send him to Fulham? Why the heck not? Or why not? Leeds can be the new Full America. You've Weston
really
McKennie,
given
Tyler
up
Adams.
on Mitro. I love it. You're so protective of referees, Brandon, that you've completely just washed your hands of Mitro, possibly forever.
Well, I don't know. One of my long-standing issues as a human is I can tend to be a little too focused on justice and the right and wrong of it all, and bless Mitro and everything he's done in West London, but it was awful to just see him square up to Chris Kavanagh the way he did. And I mean, ultimately,
most people do.
Yeah, we're way off the FPL path here, but what is the future of Alexander Mitrovic, particularly in the Premier League? What more does he have to offer? And I don't want to sound like Scott Parker here, but a team like Fulham, I think, might need a little bit of more mobility in their number 9.
It's hard to say. I mean, it's still hard to find people who can score 15 plus goals a season, right? So there's still a lot of
true
of value
enough
there.
Yeah, and if you've got one, it's very you're right. It's the last thing I want to see is Neil Maupay darkening the doorway of Craven Cottage. So
somehow Chelsea and Leicester fired their managers, and we're talking about the Mitro who's probably suspended for the rest of the season. We really have gotten off the rails here. I think Chelsea, fantasy wise, the problem with Chelsea is obviously they have another leg of their double game week to play at midweek. It's kind of a weird pod in some ways. We're recording this on Sunday. We have many matches to go in this double on Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll do a Patreon pod with more of a proper Game Week 30 preview. So we're kind of focused focused on checking in right now on game week 29, looking ahead to the rest of the season, so casting kind of a longer lens. And so some of the questions in this week's pod are going to be a little more in the evergreen territory, Brandon, sort of useful for the long term. But when you look at Chelsea, I mean, they don't play in 32. They have a double down the line, but it's in 37, and it's away to Man City and Man United. That has not been announced yet, but that's the most likely expected double. So just a lot of I don't really see myself really racking up any Chelsea players. And, Leicester, kind of the same. They don't have any doubles once this one's done. They do play. They've got a couple of matches, like they play Bournemouth in game week 30. But at this point, Bournemouth are playing better than Leicester. I don't see that as a great opportunity to load up on Leicester players. And so I don't know. This is, I guess, a long way. We've talked about this around and probably will have more coherent thoughts. I mean, again, that Potter announcement was just made, but and it kind of depends on who they bring in, right? If it's a caretaker, if it's a full, I mean, Brendan Rodgers could go there, right? He has a background. He was one of Mourinho's assistants at Chelsea many years ago. So that would actually be hilarious if they sacked Potter so that they could hire the sacked earlier in the day Brendan Rodgers.
Will not happen. Well, I think it's funny to think about, but you don't spend that much money to bring in David Brent, I guess.
I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if Nagelsmann comes in or something, maybe, right? But
seems the likeliest, doesn't it?
It does seem the likeliest. All right, so let's talk about fantasy, though. Let's talk about game week 29. Let's start with I have had a great game week. I cracked the top 5K yesterday, and I resisted as long as I could, several hours, because I never like it. I try not to avoid posting the overall rank midweek. It always feels like you're kind of cheating a little bit, but I just couldn't resist. It was so fun to crack the top 5K, and then had a pretty good Sunday as well. And so I'm now at 3,400 overall, which is highest I've been in a couple of seasons. Very exciting to be up that high, and so I'm feeling very good about my week. It's sort of everything went right, to be quite honest. Everything that the whole plan when I wildcarded in 27 was to really set myself up as well as I could for 29. And it's outside of Man United, but even that weren't okay because I had Botman. But Rhea and Steele combined for 10 points in a 6-goal match, which is absolutely insane. Got the Salah goal. The Dominic Solanke goal was maybe the most satisfying because I'm looking in our mini league right now, and FPL Game Week, which is a fun website I highly recommend, is they show you the importance of any particular player in your squad. So someone like Trippier is at 8% importance, right? Like it's 100 being the most valuable. 8% means 92% of the other managers have him already. So it's not you're not getting too much in terms of your rank. But with Dominic Solanke, it's a full 100%. I was the only person in our mini league to have him, and so it's just so fun to get a goal from a player whose ownership is super low.
Yeah, let's call that a goal in quote marks that Solanke scored. Let's not get too excited about that.
Hey, but you never know. It's like the confidence building, and that's Martinelli was on a terrible run, and then he scores that goal in the 95th minute, and he was on fire after that. So these guys just need to score a goal sometimes to get their form up. But anyway, so great week. I'm feeling really good, but I feel like your story is more interesting. So let's get into what happened. Let's get into what happened with you and when you decided that you just couldn't play your own bench boost for game week 29.
Yeah, you and I were on similar paths with the wild card 27, looking ahead to the bench boost in 29, free hit in 28. So as I planned my bench boost for this week, it was really reliant on my confidence in Arsenal players. So I kept triple Arsenal on the 27 wild card because I thought this Leeds home fixture, which proved to be correct, was really tantalizing, even in a single game week. I also held on to Haaland. So there are all these narratives that slowly started falling into place ahead of the 29 deadline, which just made it impossible for me to play the bench boost. First was what we knew a couple of weeks ago, that Danny Ward lost his goalkeeping position to Everson on Leicester. So there was this assumption that Ward is not going to play. So my bench goalkeeper not going to affect the bench boost. Saka, was the last piece of news, which the rumors started breaking right before the deadline or a few hours, that he was going to start from the bench. Okay, so that's another one of my bench boost players that is not going to play. Haaland, the rumors were quite strong that he wasn't going to play. So that's 3 of my 4 bench players. Martin Odegaard was the 4th. So it just became an impossibility for me to do that. So now I have no plan for the bench boost.
You would have to do like a -8, right? At least to field.
I would have to do a -8 to drop Saka, which I'm loath to do now, to drop Haaland, which was kind of a gamble to say I think that Haaland will start/play in game weeks 30 and 31 before they blanket 32. And hope upon hope, maybe Ward gets his starting spot back. But I'm kind of like committed to...
drop Ward likely, right?
Exactly.
So
So the move I ended up doing was I dropped Saliba, who was the other, yet another guy who was out with an injury.
That really made it tricky. Yeah.
Totally. So I dropped Saliba to bring in Kurt Zuma, which, like, God, this is one of the pain points for fantasy managers is if you're really devoted to the club you support, to bring in players or captain players against that club. Also to bring in players into your fantasy squad who you detest personally. And I'm still hung up on Zuma Catgate. Nonetheless, at 4.4 million, West Ham have a double game week. Facts be facts, Josh. And they do not blank in 32. So he seemed like
I think it was a good move. I think you. Well, it could have gone poorly if Saka had started. Then it may have been worth it to take the minus. But I think, given the way that it worked out, I think you're going to come out ahead here. And I think that the Zuma move was a good fix your weakest link situation, given that you needed a defender for just to have a full squad for this week.
So halfway through game week 29, I actually managed a green arrow without a bench boost, and I moved from 55K up to 46K. So I'm happy about that. And I've got a full
45
squad
now, Brandon. I see 45 now. You've jumped another K.
Oh my God! The FPL site notorious for constantly refreshing. So I guess I missed that one. I'm feeling bullish, and now it's I have to be optimistic, but I feel like this has also been my problem this season is I'm constantly managing for future points and not points in the game week. So I think what you've done exceptionally well for 29, Josh, is you've managed for points in this game week and you're getting them and you're reaping the rewards. And now I'm in this position where I feel like I've studiously held on to Arsenal players and Haaland so that I'm going to get future points from them. So we'll talk this episode, I'm sure, about what your plans are now that you've dropped Haaland. Are you going to bring him back? What are you going to do about players like Saka or other Arsenal mids? That's something that you have to solve. Am I in a better position because I have these players already? Well, I think truth be told, they're all just -4s and -8s away from getting them back into your squad. So I think I've hamstrung myself through my chip strategy. And if I had any regret, even though season's going well and I'm on a green arrow right now, I just do regret that I've been managing for future points instead of present points.
Yeah, it's a hard balance to strike, and I feel like it ultimately has worked out in my case. But going into this game week, I was feeling like I had been too focused on the present. Right, I played a chip in 27 and chip in 28 and had a red arrow both those game weeks. So I was so there are sort of two sides to the coin, and I think that it's always a little bit of a gamble, and so the gamble has paid off in my case. But I mean, I guess the optimistic way to look at your situation is that you are on a green arrow, almost surely will stay on it unless neither of us have Kane. So if Kane scores 16 goals, then we're probably going to be in trouble. But if he can keep himself to under 2 goals, I feel like we're going to be okay. And then we both have full squads to play on Tuesday and Wednesday. So I have 14 players still to play. I think you have 11. So a lot of points still available. And you still have a chip intact. And I think that there was a question about chips, and so we'll hold off on that until we get into the main part of the pod. But I do think that game week 34 is a prime opportunity to use your bench boost. And so I don't think that you're going to be totally caught short without a chance to use it. I think that 34 is like a pretty easy one to get yourself ready for.
Yeah, I agree. And looking ahead to 34 with that bench boost in mind, it does make game week 32 really tricky, especially with Brighton, because Brighton players have given so much of themselves, Josh, for our gain, for our benefit. Yeah. And there is a special place in Valhalla for all of them. We salute them. So I'm feeling more and more committed to holding on to Brighton players. I'm not really sure what that looks like as we navigate their blank in 32. I think Manchester United are starting to look more and more like public enemy number one, definitely dropping Luke Shaw ahead of the Manchester United blank, even though like all the teams bar Chelsea who blank in 32 do double in 34. So it's going to be it's going to be take a lot of guts to navigate around these blanks and doubles.
I think so. It's the people with a free hit in 32 have some advantages. I can see some disadvantages too. I think that it's I don't know. There are players like Liverpool, I think in particular. If Liverpool can turn things around a little bit, then I think the way that you and I have set things up, having Salah could really be an advantage. I'm not sure that people who don't have Liverpool will have a chance to do that until game week. Well, I don't know. They'll free hit into him in 32, but anyway, I don't know. I'm sort of rambling here a little bit. I don't want to get too down the road with chip talk yet. I did want to talk a little bit about the captaincy though, and this was a game week. It was really interesting. I thought we'd see a little more variety than we did with the captaincy. It's sort of classic FPL commentary where the dialogue reminds me of the NCAA tournament, where it's been like a wide open NCAA tournament, and then everybody kind of picked Houston to win in the end, and it ended up being a wide open tournament like we expected. And this, with game week 29, it was just sort of, it felt like anyone had a chance to be the best captain pick. And some people made a very compelling case for Brighton players. I know a lot of people were looking at James Maddison, even Ollie Watkins, and I suppose you could even throw Ivan Toney into there, right? There were a number of different players who were appealing, and in the end, we all effectively went for Marcus Rashford. I was shocked by just how many people went for Rashford, and I don't know if you had to do it again. I feel like the thing I'm annoyed about is I felt like I could have. I'm not seeing Brighton's attack through the right lens right now. Like I'm still not seeing this attack as like a top 5 attack, and I think that the way that they're playing at the moment, it really deserves that. I think their XG for this game was like 5, or like 4.8 or something like that. So they really are clicking incredibly well right now, and it's like I just couldn't kind of get past. Captain a Brighton player over Man United defender. And so we'll see what happens. I mean, Rashford's at home in game week, in the second half of this double game week, and things could completely turn around. The narrative could change. But at the moment, I feel like this kind of goes back to what you were saying about Brighton before. It's going to be very hard for me to drop either one of McAllister and Matoma, the two midfielders I have, even though I don't have a free hit either in 32. So, which kind of gets into the Haaland thing as well, because if I bring Haaland back, I've added another player that doesn't play in 32, which makes it a lot trickier with him. So, I think it's really, So I'm just curious. Do you have any? I don't know. I mean, it's kind of silly to say this because the game week's not over, but did you consider anyone but Rashford for the captaincy for game week 29?
I mean, honestly, the armband was on Rashford during the whole lead up to the deadline. But Matoma was logically the only other person who honestly, Salah, Matoma, Rashford, my midfielders. Yeah. I never once considered Watkins or Toney, who are my two only starting forwards. So when Salah scores the early goal against Manchester City, yes, you kind of wondered to yourself, well, is this going to be Liverpool sort of turning the narrative sort of match, and it ended up being a classic City, just as we expected, just wiping the floor with their away opposition. Yeah. Ultimately, should we have predicted that Manchester United were going to fall back down to earth without Casemiro the way they have done.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I'm not really feeling much regret now.
Yeah. I guess I just bring it up because, we'll see where we are on Wednesday evening. But the reason I bring it up is just because I think that when it's really wide open like this, and we should have some more moments like this, maybe Game Week 32 comes to mind right now, where Arsenal host Southampton, Liverpool host Forest, right? I think we're going to get a lot of debate there as well. So when there's a game week where there's a lot of debate over who the best pick is, and you are trying to make up points, I think that is a great week to just go for it. Because if there's a lot of debate, it just means whoever the runaway captain pick is probably not going to be significantly outscoring the other options, right? Even if he ends up being the top scorer, it's probably not going to be a Haaland scores 25, everyone else scores 5 kind of week. It's going to be a wide range of outcomes between 4 and 19 points or something like that. Yeah. So just a future lesson, I think. There are times when it makes sense to go different with the captaincy. There are times when it makes sense to just go with the field. And I think this was a week where it made sense to be different, even though neither of us did it. But there's a lesson to be taken from that, I think.
And amplified by the double game week of it all, which increases the odds that your left field captaincy pick has 2 opportunities to come through for you. So I totally agree with what you're saying there.
Yeah. Newcastle was so good today too. They're really, really impressive performance from them. All right, well let's take a break. I did want to just quickly shout out. We have a new Volkswagen patron, Brandon. This is the T-shirt level patron. So thank you to Motaz El Sagri. Thank you so much for supporting the pod. We're going to reach out right after we're done with this recording, Brandon. Get this guy or this person a new T-shirt, new Always Cheating T-shirt. And if you want to support the podcast, get T-shirts, get an extra podcast each week, join the Discord and chat with people. Then and lots of meetups. I feel like everyone in our Discord is meeting up in different places, Brendan, all over the literally globally. I don't want to sound like I'm exaggerating, but it literally is true that there's been meetups happening all over the globe, and that's just really cool. And so if you want to join that the Always Cheating community, go to patreon.com/alwayscheating. We'll get you set up on the Discord, and you can get those extra pods starting with this Thursday's podcast.
On that global tip, my recent vacation to Paris, I think it was the first time I've left the country and not gone somewhere where a listener hasn't reached out and said, "Hey, let's meet up." And I'd be very curious if anyone listening right now is from France. I don't need to meet you. I don't need to see you in person, although I'd love to. But I would just like a little hand, put your hand up and let us know you're out there.
My sister lives in France, Brandon, and her boyfriend listens. So there you go. There you
are. There you have it.
Yeah, there you are. Yeah.
I snubbed your brother, your brother-in-law, whoever.
I know. I didn't help set that up. All right. Well, let's take a break. We'll get back and we'll answer some questions and talk about Game Week 30. All right, Brian, we're back. Game Week 30 kicks off on Saturday morning. Another FPL classic. I love it. Love to have these back. And it's just matches on Saturday and Sunday. Nice and clean. Fun featured match on Sunday. Liverpool hosting Arsenal. That should be a really interesting match. The key question for Game Week 30, Brandon, is... And this is just an opinion area here because we don't know. And I honestly, like, our opinion's as good as anybody else's because... I highly doubt that Pep's going to come out and say anything definitively on Friday. But do you think that Haaland, A, plays and B, starts this upcoming Saturday?
I do. The feeling I have is, and Pep came out after the Liverpool match and said, okay, now we have a week ahead of us to focus on the following weekend. Haaland's received the rest. He is now available to be considered. Now I'm totally paraphrasing to be selected. I'm totally paraphrasing there, but what you can sort of read hopefully or optimistically into that is Pep is like, okay, now he wasn't quite ready to play at top gear against Liverpool. We knew that was possibly going to be a really tough game. We've got Champions League fixtures coming up. I think Champions League is clearly a huge priority for Pep and City, and Haaland not having played a match over the international break, not playing against Liverpool, will need to get some match fitness, I think. And what better opponent than Southampton and Southampton, they're playing at home, right? No, they're playing away down at the same areas. So, but I have him captained, and I'm ready to party with Haaland.
Yeah, I don't have him, and I have to decide what I'm going to do. And I think the dilemma is if you don't captain Haaland, who's the next best captaincy, right? Who's the next best pick? And I think it's probably Marcus Rashford, Everton at home. I mean, let's see if we get another kind of blah performance from Man United at midweek, then I suddenly feel like a little bit less enthusiastic about that. But at the moment, that's where I'm leaning. I have the captaincy on Rashford at the moment, and but if we don't go with him, then I'm not quite sure there is a great captaincy pick outside of Haaland, which I think makes things really tricky. Because I was just talking before we hit the break about how there are weeks when you want to go different with the captaincy, there's weeks when you don't, and I think that we can end up seeing a very highly owned. Now, Haaland's ownership has dropped significantly in the top 10K and the top 100K.
Yes.
So you're not in the territory where he is a universally owned and captain player. His ownership is not going to be at 190% or anything like that for Game Week 30, especially if we don't see lots of training pitch, activity. And, if there's any kind of doubt at all about him, then I'm not going to bring him in. But I may just have to bite the bullet and do it, and there just may not be any way around it, especially because not only do they play Southampton in Game Week 30, but then they play Forest at home in Game Week 31. So you're missing out on just two really ideal game weeks to have Erling Haaland, and I think that's where things get a little bit trickier. And the only worry, I suppose, would be if the first leg of the Champions. So just to map things out a little more cleanly. So they have the St. Mary's match on the Southampton match on Saturday. On Tuesday, they play the first leg of the Champions League, and then they play another home match the weekend after that. And then I believe it's the following Wednesday, right? So 8 days later, they will play the second leg of that match, and that match will be away in Bayern. Right. So which is just going to be an incredibly difficult match, no matter how much they're up. Right. Unless they somehow go up 7-0 or something, which isn't going to happen.
Yeah. Because City can't play defense is really their big Achilles heel. So they can score 1 billion goals at home to Bayern. But the fact that they can't play defense at all.
It's been a little stronger, but it's a little, so you just don't really know what's going to, I don't know. So I think that would be the concern is, okay, because if we map out the best case scenario is easy. Fully rested Haaland, plays Southampton, needs to get into form ahead of the Champions League match, scores a quick hat trick, gets pulled in the 72nd minute, goes and plays Bayern, whatever, scores a goal, and then he's rested. There's no reason not to play him again. He plays again that weekend, and in the Forest match, and also has a great performance. The nightmare scenario is Haaland comes off the bench on Saturday and plays 18 minutes to get his feet wet or something like that before, in a match that's already over, right? And just sort of, has a couple runs, but nothing really happens. Plays in the Champions League, but Bayern wins 2-0 at the Etihad, right? And now you're in a nightmare scenario. So that weekend, Haaland needs to be fully rested in order to be ready for the Bayern match on Wednesday, and then suddenly you have Haaland for 2 weeks and you get 18 minutes and no attacking returns, and you've captained him both times. So that is the possible nightmare scenario, and it's sort of it feels like a pretty strong binary here. Like it's hard for me to see, I don't know, him starting and just having kind of a mediocre return in both those matches. I mean, I guess it's possible that he just scores like a goal in both them. The fact that the Southampton match is away does give me pause. I mean, it just makes me feel like increasingly like God, I should have saved that free hit in 28. I kind of knew this was going to happen. This is the reason I held on to Haaland instead of Kane on my free hit, right? Like I did not want to drop Haaland. It was not until literally minutes before the deadline on Saturday when I finally dropped Haaland. And I did it for Watkins, so I don't have any regrets about it. I mean, that's already paid off in terms of the return. But the reason I wouldn't want to bring in Haaland is just that I'm wasting another transfer 2 weeks ahead of a big blank on a player who also blanks. And I have 3 Brighton players and 3 Man United players as well. So then suddenly I have 7 players who don't play. Now, one of them is Steele, so I'm at least a little covered on that, but I'll still have 2 Brighton outfield players, 3 Man United players, and Haaland, right? So I have 6 players who don't play, who are in the outfield, and that's assuming no other injuries. And then I would only have 2 transfers, game week 31 and 32. So that means I can get to a full 11 on a -4. It's not impossible, but it just makes things a lot messier. And then
So
do
would
I
like
want to
what
take
I-
a minus? Yeah, let's go ahead.
What I'm hearing, Josh, is that you're looking for a way out of this Haaland debate.
Yeah, my strong preference would be to not have Haaland. And I guess what I wish was that Man United or somebody had a really, really amazing fixture. And the problem is like Manchester, that's going to be a scrappy match. I just don't see, I would expect Man United to win that match, but I don't know that it's like a 5-0 win. Maybe if Lampard was still there, but as it is.
Yeah. They're like a street fighting team. Everton are now under Dyche, and particularly it's not like Liverpool/Everton are all that far away from the town of Manchester. There'll be lots of support. I'm with you, but I think if you already have Haaland, I think you can't hesitate and. Yeah. Be like me, captain him, regardless of whatever doubt you have, because this is the advantage that you have, particularly as you pointed out, Josh. A lot of managers in that upper echelon of rank have smartly dropped Haaland for game week 29.
Right.
Now they're in a position like you are, Josh, where they just don't have him, and they're either going to be burning points to get him back in, or they are going to go without. So this is like our moment, the Haaland owners, and we have to take it. Will it work out? Will he play? There are certainly no guarantees. I will be watching Instagram for training ground photos, like you said. That's really the best we can do. So what is the scenario in which, Josh, you say, I absolutely have to get Haaland? Is it really just down to what you see on Instagram?
Yeah, the Twitter feed for Man City.
Is it just a smiling picture of Erling Haaland on the training ground?
It's going to need to be a lot of smiles, Brandon. I need to see multiple photos across multiple days.
A toothy smile.
I would say if Haaland's out there and training and playing all week, I probably just have to bite the bullet and bring him back in. I think that is...
Can you do that cleanly without a hit?
I can do that cleanly without a hit. I'd have to move either Tony or it would be Ivan Toney. It would have to be Tony. So I would move Tony to Haaland. I wouldn't do it with Watkins because Watkins
home forest,
exactly. So so I could do it without a hit. I've got $5.2 million in the bank right now, so it's a clean move. And so that's probably what I would do. And then I might just field 10 in game week 32. I think that would also be a possibility. I don't really want to be taking players out who are going to double in 34 for a hit. I don't see that as a great. Although I also think it's fine because I will have 2 weeks of transfers. But then you just can't make that team as strong as you want, right? Again, if you're because every transfer out for a player you want to hold on to is 2 transfers, right? There's the transfer out and the transfer back in. So I don't know. I actually think fielding 10 in game week 32 might be fine. And my only concern right now actually is what we see from Kane over the next couple of weeks, because if you have Kane and if they've sacked their managers too, like half the league has sacked their manager in the last 2 weeks. So we'll see what we see from Kane in game week 29. But then, Spurs play Brighton at home in game week 30. I think that you'd expect them probably to. Brighton have not. Their attack's been great. The defense is just so. And, I think that, and then they play Bournemouth at home in 31. So I think you could make a case if you have Kane but don't have Haaland to to just ride it out the next couple of weeks. I don't know. So it's going to be a tricky one. But not having Kane for 31 or 32 does give me pause. I could drop Haaland in 32 for Kane and then kind of do the old hokey pokey, and bring him back in a week later. That's not an impossible thing.
Yeah, if you mentioned Salah a while back, and if Salah weren't kind of creaking back into form and desirable and not blinking in 32, I think I'd gleefully just drop Salah to get both Haaland and Kane up front. But as it is, Salah and Liverpool assets just look like they have too much to offer down the home stretch. To now, you're really going to have to stretch your budget to find a way to get Kane plus Salah plus Haaland, and that's I'm not sure really tricky business.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's possible. And I think that, do we ever get a definitive reason why Saka didn't start? Was it just him playing a ton of minutes across the international break? The
reason from Arteta was illness, so he came back from break and was ill.
Okay,
but I suspect that is a euphemism for the guy. Saka's just been playing tons of minutes, and there's still a ton of work to be done to hold on to their league leading position. So I mean that match, if you see this was talked about when Leeds put out their starting 11 for that match, everyone was like, are Leeds going to get fined for starting like this weak ass starting 11? They just got their butts kicked.
I know, it was so annoying to have that goal, that conceded goal late. It was sort of just like really like one little moment from Leeds, and that was but that's how it goes. That's fantasy, friend. All right, well, let's get into some more questions here, Brandon. FPL Brooklyn has a question that I think is interesting and sort of it's worth considering, but I think he kind of answers his own question as well. Okay, so that's enough preamble. Let me get into the question here. He says, right now it seems like the consensus is free hit 32. But for those of us who can field an 11 and 32 with just a few moves, is it worth the upside of a free hit in game week 34? Or are the players we want for free hit 34 players we would want in the long term? So, Brandon, can you quickly recap who plays twice in 34? Do you want to tell us that real quick if you have it handy?
Of course. The teams who double in 34 are as follows. Brighton, who have 2 home fixtures, Wolves and Manchester United. Fulham also double in 34, hosting Manchester City and away Liverpool. Not great, Bob. Liverpool double in 34, both at Anfield, and we know Liverpool are just a different animal for the better at Anfield. Spurs and Fulham. This is looking pretty good. This is why we are continually talking about Mo Salah. Manchester City also double. Fulham away, West Ham at home. Manchester United double. Aston Villa at home, Brighton away. West Ham, 2 away fixtures, Palace and Man City. So to recap, West Ham, United, City, Liverpool, Fulham, and Brighton all double. So let me count teams that I definitely just want to have players from regardless. It would be Brighton, probably Liverpool, City, and United. So I think my general feeling is, well, first of all, there are a number of free hitters in Patreon mini league that we have. All the people who free hit in this massive double game week 29 are having like the most miserable weeks. I'm not entirely sure why, but it seems like these types of doubles offer a lot of opportunity.
I bet it was Chelsea. I haven't seen some of these free hits, but I bet it was going in on Chelsea. That has to be a big factor.
do wonder, but I think it's bad to put it's bad. You can put yourself in a situation where you just overthink when you just. Everything's right there in front of you. We kind of like this. Yeah. This is why I really enjoy this stage of the season. Is we've already learned most of what we need to learn. Now we just have to put all of that intelligence and knowledge into motion and into action. And the free hit often blows up in our faces because then we just cast aside what we know to try and be smarter than we need to be. So I feel like 32 is still the time to free hit, even if you can field a full squad. Yeah.
I think I sort of inadvertently answered this question earlier too, because I talked about what I don't want to be doing is dropping a bunch of players who double later. And Yeah, I mean, if you're just, I mean, at this point, you just don't want to be, I mean, and this is why I said he kind of answered his own question was you don't want to be dropping Brighton players down the stretch, right? Not only do they have another double, but they're just playing really well at the moment. You don't really want to, so sort of, there's just kind of no reason not to free hit in 32 because all the players that you want, you're going to want for the end. Yep.
Why does this question asker have a full 11 for game week 32? I think would be the first question we should ask is like, how have you sold your team short that you're in this position? And I'm sorry to like point the finger at this poor listener, but I don't know. I just feel like the best team that you could have is not one that has people who don't blank at 32. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess it just depends. I mean, because you can bench 3 or 4, I suppose, right? If you include a goalkeeper benching, but it's tricky to decide who to bench, right? I mean, if you think of Rashford as one of the must bench, not going to drop players, then suddenly that leaves 2 spots, right? So it's either Haaland and Bruno, or maybe it's Rashford and the 2 Brighton midfielders. And I actually think it'd be really helpful for anyone who's not free hit in 32 to start thinking right now about who you're going to be dropping over the next couple of weeks, because if you just inevitably are going to drop one of your Brighton midfielders, even if you plan to bring them back, starting in 33, then that may be a move you want to make right away. Right, and sort of maximize what you can get from having somebody else in your squad. Like for me, I don't have Saka in my squad at the moment, and Saka is now rested. He plays away to Liverpool. Liverpool are like the leakiest they've ever. I really want to have like a general interest conversation about Liverpool at some point. I would love to just talk about what I think they have to do to fix their squad. It's fascinating to me, right? Because you kind of go player by player, and there's like so much there, but it's just not clicking right now, right? The defense, and it's sort of like all roads lead to. I mean, first of all, Fabinho has to get replaced, right? But the whole
midfield has to be overhauled. I think that is the biggest issue for sure.
But the Trent question looms large, right?
Yes.
Can you have a strong defense with Trent? And I don't know. So anyway, that's a separate pod though. So let's keep moving here. GP says, will Jesus get back to must own this season? Gabriel Jesus.
So I have an interesting Gabriel Jesus story. So cast your minds back to Fest NYC. Sure. Mid-September, we were going to get together with all our pals in New York from around the country, around the world for that matter. Yeah. The Queen passed, tragically. Games were canceled, but we still had fun. We still got together with a bunch of listeners. One listener whose name is Marlon. He was very big on... In Living Color. There's a direct line between In Living Color and Always Cheating. Marlon was big on Darwin Nunez, and he and I made a friendly wager, and I backed Gabriel Jesus. I said, by the end of the season, Gabriel Jesus will have more fantasy points than Darwin Nunez. What was the wager? The wager was, whoever lost would have to write a handwritten note saying that the other person was a better fantasy manager than them. I thought I was in real jeopardy here when Gabriel Jesus gets this, what could be a season-ending injury. And he has now missed half the season. Now, Gabriel Jesus is back. He starts this weekend, and he scores a brace. Without looking at the details, Josh, if you haven't already, I will tell you right now, Darwin Nunez has 82 fantasy points. Having missed half the season, how many fantasy points do you think Gabriel Jesus has?
I did look. He's got 83. He's got one more. I looked because I was curious just how many games Jesus had missed. And it was 12 games, Brandon. He missed 12 consecutive matches. Now, Darwin has missed a handful here and there. Let's see. He's missed a few, but some of those were at his own hand, Brandon.
That's exactly. Red cards.
I don't think red cards should not be dismissed.
I'll put this to you, and I also put it out to our listeners. Let me know. Do you think that I have rights to just call it right now? Just on principle, I've won the bet. I think I have.
No, that's quitter talk. I think you've got to see this thing through.
I basically like operating like a online mobile like betting service where I'm offering like an early payout.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let me see. You have 1, 2. I mean, Darwin has 2 more fixtures left this season than Arsenal, and I would still favor Gabriel Jesus over Darwin. So I think you're going to win this one. Yeah, so I think he will. I think that I may have him as soon as, I don't even know. I mean, I guess it would be. I mean, I love Haaland. He's super fun. But if Haaland were injured, I would consider bringing Gabriel Jesus back as soon as this game week. I mean, I think that he's really that Liverpool match is a really appealing match to have a couple of starters from Arsenal in your squad, and not having any, I'm feeling a little left out at the moment.
And Gabriel Jesus is at 7.9 million. So just if you're, Haaland is fit and fighting, and that's great. He's immovable. So look at Ivan Toney and Ollie Watkins, the 2 strikers du jour at the moment. Toney's 7.8 at the moment. Let's see if I have that right. That he's actually 7.9 full all out. So that's just like a like-for-like swap right there, I think. Yeah. We probably, with Brentford's doubles kind of out of the way at this point, we've gotten all the juice there is to squeeze there.
Although, I mean, with that said, Tony has been, like, insanely consistent this season. I mean, he's really... let's see, he's third for forwards, and he's got 17 goals and 4 assists in the season. So I don't really want to drop Tony. I don't know. I may just have to do the... I'm gonna have to fade Haaland, Brandon, and I hate to do it, but if I did that, then I would probably consider moving as soon as this week one of my Brighton mids to Saka and start getting back on the Arsenal train. And it's an interesting dilemma for sure.
Just for our listeners out there who are looking for an edge and they're chasing. Is it fair to say that Gabriel Jesus falls into that category of he's a differential 100%. Player in this moment? So I think if you're chasing, just jump on him now if you can.
Yeah, I mean his ownership is 25% and 25.6%. I would gather the like 24.9%. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Our dead teams because he was so universally owned the first 8 weeks or so of the season.
Yep.
We lost a lot of good managers, Brandon, during the World Cup. A lot of good soldiers, but we'll get them back in August. All right, a couple more questions. Neil Bond says, "Is Grealish the Man City #1 mid going forward? Are we ready to,
Jack Grealish was amazing in that Liverpool match. He was amazing, like stunning. So I couldn't be more impressed. And from, we talk a big game about having fun on this podcast. Let the history writers actually say how much fun we did have at the end of the day. I don't know. But Jack Grealish, he is that player. If you want to have fun and maybe get some points along the way, I would be getting him. And now it's like, is this recency bias and some sort of eye test stuff? But I would, no way I would be getting Mahrez over Grealish at the moment, even though I thought Mahrez also was amazing against Liverpool. But Grealish has established somehow a permanent place in that starting 11 under Pep. Very hard to do. He's not becoming De Bruyne in the sense that he plays that role in the team, but De Bruyne used to be that guy where we just know his influence over the match is so important to City that Pep will not drop him. And I think Grealish was that way maybe for a while because the club just paid so much money for him. And now we're getting to that point where Grealish is undroppable because he influences City's style of play to that degree. So, I think him well over Gundogan, Mahrez, Bernardo, De Bruyne. Though, De Bruyne is just out of the conversation, just given what we're saying about Kane, Haaland, and Salah with Liverpool's fixtures. No way to justify getting De Bruyne, I would suggest, right? Do you agree? Disagree?
I thought KDB had a great match, but he's he's really, really, really expensive, like team warping levels of expensive. So I'm kind of there. He's just been a little too inconsistent this season. Given his price, I think he's not inconsistent by like any normal player's standards, but at 12 million, it's you're asking for a lot. I think Grealish is, if I had a free hit in 32, I think considering Grealish as soon as this game week, right? Given that they play Southampton and Forest in the next two, I think that's a reasonable, right? Because you have him for the next two, and then you'd free hit in 32, and then you'd have him for the double in 34. So I think he's very much on the table, and it's exciting. It's we really haven't had a lot of midfielders to consider so far this season. The Foden experiment was a debacle, right? But and we haven't had that.
I still don't know why.
Moment. Yeah, I don't know.
We
don't. Well, we may never know. It's we thought he was going to be the next David Silva, and it never quite happened for some reason. All right, next question comes from Lovejoy. This one hurts me because I'm a triple upper myself. But Lovejoy says, "Have we fallen into an unnecessary Man United triple up fever dream?" What do you think?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Luke Shaw. Well, I don't know why Luke Shaw. There was this moment. It was post World Cup where Shaw was just like putting up bonus points like he was Kieran Trippier, and I was like, okay, Shaw is the new Trippier. Oh, how wrong I was. There is only one Kieran Trippier, and I apologize deeply. But yeah, now we just have to remember what we forgot about Manchester United is they are prone to great struggles defensively. And they just kind of overperformed for a good stretch there. Now, how much of it is Casemiro when he's either in or out? I don't know, because Casemiro had a couple of bad matches or sleepy matches leading into that red card suspension. So I think it's just a matter of Manchester United kind of coming down to earth, informing our fantasy conversation. Yeah, we probably just went a little overboard with specifically how undroppable these guys are from a fantasy team. Yeah. So when you're looking at the Manchester United blank in 32, Luke Shaw is like the first of all of the players in my squad who I'll be looking to drop, definitely, and probably to bring an Arsenal defender back in for me personally. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have a triple up. What's your plan? Are you planning on holding anybody? Are you planning on holding Bruno?
Well, I wanted to, given that they double in 34, and I mean they play Everton and Forest in their next two. So dropping him is not at the top of my priority list. I'll say that much. I could see myself dropping him, but it probably won't be until I'm going into 32. The problem is that he is playing so deep, and I thought that would be. I mean, he's playing like a really like deep line play. Again, you mentioned Casemiro, and obviously that's a factor. Although, I mean, he had Sabitzer and
McTominay.
McTominay? Thank you. I actually thought Sabitzer had a pretty good match, all things considered. I thought he did some good things on the pitch today, but he's clearly not in sync with that squad. There were a couple times when he did cool things, but they didn't quite work, and it just like he and Antony didn't quite link up at times. And
was he skateboarding through the midfield? Sounds like he was like doing ollies and whatnot. Yeah, that was incredible.
It was like Poochie, just inserted into the, So I don't really know what. I think that let's pause on the what to do with Man United players question until. It's kind of funny I'm saying this because I'm the one who put this question in the running order. But I think that I guess my feeling is let's not freak out yet. Let's give ourselves a couple more weeks, and then going into 32, let's decide who must stay and who must go if you are not if you are not free hitting. I realize most people listening to this pod probably will be free hitting, and so I'm trying to balance out the discussion here a little bit. And I think that if you have them, I don't see any urgent need to drop them just because the next two fixtures are so good. And they're so good at home too, right? So I think that Everton fixture could be fine. If I'm at all worried about Haaland, I'm just going to captain Rashford and hope for the best. All right, Brandon, we have one more question here. This is from Murray Roach. long time question asker on the pod, Brandon. Murray Roach says, why did any of us ever buy a Ben Chilwell? And he says, Reece James can be used instead for the same question. So you mentioned and this is the problem that the replacement, and again, I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert on Chelsea. I'm just talking about fantasy here. Okay. So we'll restrict our response into that lens.
Noted.
But yes, I think the problem is the problem that everybody can see from miles away, and it affects fantasy as well, which is it is a very, very unsettled team, right? And somehow he squeezed Reece James, Cucurella, and Chilwell into the squad. I don't know how that worked, and guess what? It immediately collapsed because Cucurella played in Ollie Watkins for the opening goal. So clearly, it was like you're trying to fit 37 pieces into 11 spots. It was always going to lead to like a little bit of chaos. And I think that's even players who are good and are doing good things in the pitch it's just not a settled squad at all. It's like the opposite of Arsenal right now, right? Where they are.
Yeah, and Cucurella and Reece James both were being played as sort of like quasi center backs too, and I owned Cucurella for a brief period this season, and I tried to sing his praises or justify these moves, and he was horrible against Aston Villa. Not excluding his assist to Ollie Watkins, but Ben Chilwell, I feel so horrible for Ben Chilwell fantasy owners because he was so good. I thought he was
hit the post, right?
Yeah, he was so far forward. He was and hustling back to play great defense as well. He was all in, and that's like the stuff that really ingratiates yourself to the home support. He was just like all down for the cause. But I agree with you. It's like Chelsea just feels like we're coming to this idea that Chelsea are a full-on stay away, regardless of how good these players might be, because fantasy, as far as the game and the gambles that you take, you're trying to make as sure of, the wild swings can pay off from time to time, but you have to have some level of certainty, even when you are taking a wild swing, that you could get something. And Chelsea are so unpredictable, and the ceiling doesn't feel high enough with them to boot, that it just feels like they're in this isolated zone. They're in the penalty box of FPL at the moment.
Yeah, this was kind of my Isak dilemma as well. I did definitely consider Isak as my Haaland replacement when it became clear that I was going to have to drop Haaland this week, and I just didn't feel like I knew enough about whether I could trust Isak. I felt like I just didn't quite have a handle on what I was going to get from him. And I think it's similar with Chelsea, where I need to kind of feel like I understand how they work in the squad, how many chances they're going to, I don't know. So it's like, it can be kind of a tricky one sometimes. So I think, I don't know. So I'm sort of, I am probably we'll kind of bring things to a circular conclusion here, Brandon, which is that I am probably avoiding Chelsea for the rest of the season. I mean, things can always change, and let's see, game week 38, right? They have a double in 37, but at the moment, I think this is a squad that needs to get more settled before we can really consider them, and that may not happen until fall 2023.
Arsenal have just really jammed up the fantasy midfield right now because their players are as cheap as they are, and then you've got Brighton on top of that. Yeah. Chelsea becomes viable at some point this season only if there are these teams that I just mentioned just like stop performing and make you believe that they're not going to. Like if you've got an opening in your squad, if you're posting a job opening, then maybe Chelsea is to consider. But you're not moving any of these. Yeah, it's like what I was saying earlier. It's like we know what we know now, and we just need to act on it. And if one of the things that we know suddenly becomes untrue, this is like a real philosophical logic problem.
Who was that known unknowns? Who was that?
Donald Rumsfeld.
Yeah.
Chelsea is the I don't know if they qualify as a known unknown, but I think you know what I mean. I think you know what I'm saying here.
I do. So yeah, we'll see. But right now and I think the same logic applies to Leicester. Just to bring that back to Madison. Everyone keeps looking for an excuse to bring in Madison. I don't know, Brandon. If is it because he's a good looking chap? Is that what it is? Is it
because he's good at football? He's like when
he plays
well, he's so good. Yeah.
But this squad does not set up. This is there's no peak Jamie Vardy's not walking through that door this season. I'm sorry to tell you, and it's that team just needs a shake up. And the defense I feel like is in the same category. I don't expect things to turn around. We'll see if Everson holds a spot of reward. I mean, what a season long blunder that turned out to be. Just letting your star goalkeeper go like a week before the season started, not replacing
him.
Yeah, it's just they may get relegated because of that. It's a crazy, I don't know, just weird situation there. I'm not quite sure why Casper did that. I mean, fair enough to him, but he's a Leicester legend. But man, they really ended up hurting them this season.
Well, I mean, he was the canary in the coal mine, Casper Schmeichel. Yeah. When he left, we should have known that the jig was up and this team was going to be a complete basket case. But spare a thought for Kelechi Iheanacho, because it has always been a mystery to all of us playing fantasy, and I'm sure just like IRL football fans, why Iheanacho doesn't start every match under Brendan Rodgers. And now that Rodgers is out, we can maybe see more of him.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, he's got 3 goals, 4 assists in the season, but he still barely starts. When he starts, he scores though, frequently. I mean, he is, he's got 2 goals. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I'm still struggling to read this new. I don't know why they redesigned the website mid-season and reversed the order of all this stuff. So it used to go game week 1 down, and now game week 1 is at the bottom and on the way up. And so I keep misreading the data when I'm looking at it on the fantasy website. So anyway, that's just a little complaint to end this week's pod. Thank you so much for listening. Good luck to everybody. I don't think there's anyone out there that doesn't have at least 7, 8 or more players playing throughout the rest of the game week. So hopefully this pod was a nice mid-game week break. Good luck in Game Week 30. We'll do a Patreon pod on Thursday evening looking ahead to Game Week 30. And thanks again. Thanks again to Eric for coming on last week's pod. Got some very nice feedback on that. It was really great to have him on. And he continues to do great. He's inside the top 500 now. So congrats to him. And patreon.com/alwayscheating is where you can go to support the pod. Brennan, can you thank our producer patrons, please?
Yes, big thanks to producers Mike DePietro, Trevor Ingerson, our buddy Chris Howell, to Big Gaffer, Babas Kuhn, James Holland, Dave Wegner, Lodal, Nick Wright, Lazarus Janos, Jesse Halstead, Bruce Kerr, Brian Chin, Rich Evans, Blair Jacobson, Todd Byerly, Andy Portlock, Dan Parsons at FPL Merch, Carrie Swanson, Jefferson Turner, Francis Moore, Sam Shower, Caleb Robbie, Lee Hickman, Vulgar Paulson Kruger, Alex Holcomb, James Keatley, The Saint, Bob Fox, Craig Jackson, James Conroy, Shalin F. Kadakia, Terrence O'Donnell, Paul Herzig, Heath Cram, Roberto Morals, Thomas Tisloff, and Noah and Louise. Rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter at HealthCheaters or wherever you get fine social media. Visit our website for all this information and more at alwayscheating.com. Fingers crossed. I've been making this offer to a lot of people, and I'll make it to you now, Josh. If Lewis Dunk scores a goal against Bournemouth, I promise you I will go onto your LinkedIn profile and I will write a glowing professional endorsement for you. How does that sound?
For me personally?
Yeah.
That sounds
and it will
great.
have nothing to do with fantasy.
This is not a wager. This is not like I have to do the same if he doesn't.
No, you don't have to do anything.
It's a guarantee.
No, it's just something I'll do. I promise you.
That sounds great. He almost scored on Saturday. He had a great chance.
He did, and I can't. There was somebody on our Discord, our Patreon members. I promised to write a recommendation for them on LinkedIn if he did, and he almost did.
Take a
and now I'm passing it on to you. So now you stand to gain.
That sounds wonderful. Yeah, you can talk about I don't even know. You can decide what you want to put on there. That sounds great.
Think outside now I'm the box, your paradigm shifting and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, exactly. You had strong command of SEO. Where throw some fun buzzwords in there. All right. Well, thanks everyone for knows my way around a CMS. I don't know. All right. Well, thanks to everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week. Bye.